Welcome to Going Deep. Brandon Angelo at Angelo_fantasy on X.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. At Matt Waldman on X. That's me, I think. It might be. I don't know. But we got 6 topics we're going to talk about as we get ready for the season here. And certainly now that we've had a couple weeks of preseason and some camp, now's the time to kind of, give us a chance to talk about some stuff. So let's start with what are some who's a buzzy preseason player that you're just not sold on? Like he's getting a lot of acclaim, but you're just like, let's just wait and see. I'm not really there.
Sure. Man, I gotta say, Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams. I,
Okay.
I think that's the big one for me because we've seen this song and dance before with other players, right? Who the year 3 breakout, right? Obviously, he's been injured. He got suspended for the gambling incident, and it looks like he's had a really good camp. But for me, is it good enough to supplant for targets Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta? And then also too with reports of Jameer Gibbs working more in the slot with Montgomery in the backfield and using him as a traditional receiver as well. He's going to take up more of target share than he did last year, I would assume. I don't know if Jameson Williams is going to be like a startable fantasy asset, and that's the thing is like is he going to command enough of a target share and enough volume of that offense, which is a really good offense, really efficient offense. But I think that they're most efficient in is running the football. And so that's the biggest thing for me is I don't know if he's gonna be the 2 in that offense that
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown's 1. I think Sam Laporta is ascending into being a top 3 tight end in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I think getting him the rock and how steady he is and how steady he was as a rookie, that was the most impressive part of what he did. It's a hard position to play in the NFL, as you know.
Yeah.
And so he did it about as good as he historically anyone's ever done as a rookie tight end. So I think he takes another step up and kind of ascends into being a top 3 tight end in the league. So all that being said, I don't know if Jameson Williams is going to be I think he could be like a Will Fuller minus type player, but I don't think the consistency is going to be there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great take. And I think that I'm excited to watch how much he's improved to see if he has and like what that's going to translate to during the week in a reality based football perspective, but in a
Right.
fantasy based football perspective, yeah, I'm just kind of like he's a dart throw who might have some big weeks. That's
Right.
that's that's about it. I'm gonna go all in and say Jaden Daniels. I'm
Okay.
I'm
Wow.
not
All
buying.
right.
I'm not sold on it.
Okay.
And
For sure.
because here's the thing, I watched some of that game. I watched some of the game this weekend. A lot of first read throws, a lot of RPOs. Cliff Kingsbury at its finest. Does that mean that Cliff Kingsbury's offense will means that it's supporting what Jaden does best and takes away what he does worst, and that that can translate to production? I think so. I mean, he could have 3 to 5 games where people are really high on him, but I just see him and I think Marcus Mariota. I mean,
Okay.
and the reason and I don't mean like the entire career of Marcus Mariota, but I think I can see him having a 3, 4, 5 touchdown debut. Everyone
Yep.
thinking he is the new top of the heap of all the quarterbacks, and then everybody catches up to what they're doing,
Yep.
and then we start to see things that Jaden Daniels hasn't proven yet, right now, which is can he read complex coverages that the NFL's going to throw at all these quarterbacks? He didn't read,
100%.
how good is he going to be in the pocket in terms of moving out and getting out? Why is it that we looked at him running into brick walls in the college game, and not only did he do it again in the most recent preseason game and look over at his coach and go, it's going to be tough for me to just fix this overnight, which you understand. But you also have Austin Eckler literally being interviewed and saying, like, calling him out about it in a friendly way, but saying, look, this is my job to do this. Don't do this
Right.
yourself. They're all trying to get the message in his head that we would like you to play an entire season, we would like your development to be able to take place throughout the entire year. And if
Right.
it gets cut short soon, you've got some problems. So, and then I look at Terry McLaurin and I think he's a really good wide receiver too. I don't think he's a wide receiver one.
Yep.
And then when there's rumors that Jahan Dotson may not make the team or may not be the number two at the very worst, and Olamide Zacchaeus, who I really liked out of school, is like a late round sleeper type of guy, and Drew Lieberman, the coach, his coach, who I've talked a lot about Drew Lieberman on shows. When he's saying to me, listen, if you have the draft capital, there are people in Atlanta, and I'm one of the people who've been around these guys. I think he could have been a starter and have a chance to really develop into a more used player than he's been than what's happened. But he's labeled a special teams late round big play slot guy rather than, and that's not even the best stuff he does. So maybe he gets a chance to play, but beyond that, I mean, Ben Sano first year, I like Ben Sanot a lot. But is he going to be Sam Laporta part two? I don't think so in that offense. I don't. And that offense, again.
It's tough because then who's the number two?
Yeah.
And you're right. Who's the number two target in that offense? I think you're spot on when you say Terry McLaurin's a really high end receiver two in the league.
Yeah,
I agree with that 100%. But you look at that roster. Who's your second read?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Zach Ertz is probably gonna start at tight end.
Yep.
Which he knows the offense, right? He's been in that system. But my gosh, it doesn't really inspire a ton of confidence when your backfield's Brian Robinson Jr. and end of career Austin Eckler. I don't know what the expectation should be for a guy like that, where, Daniel's a talented kid, but it's also, I'll be honest with you, I don't think that system is as quarterback friendly as everybody thinks it is.
No.
It's a tough system because you can't developing in that system and developing as an NFL quarterback are two very different things.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be interesting.
And so, okay. So let's take a look at just the scouting report with Daniels. We know that some people felt like, I know if you listen to Greg Cosell and Doug Farrar, that they felt like that he was a better processor than people expected. Now,
sure.
I'm not one of those people. I'm the people I'm the worse than expected. I think that he is a beat slow to a beat and a half slow between first and second and third reads too often. I think that he gets away from stuff, but there's things that he doesn't put two and two together with certain types of route coverage combinations that you would say, okay, I know this is my coverage. I know my routes. I should understand with this play that I've got a deep crosser here or an over route that goes to this zone. And I can anticipate that if I just wait if I take one hitch, I can throw this rather than turn my back to the defense and spin out and run, or even just escape the pocket without doing all that. And so you look at that, and he's a big play thrower who, he's got a nice arm. He can throw the deep ball really well. But you're that kind of player. It's kind of either or with your game, with some moments where you can go, okay, yeah, sometimes he makes that second and third read. And if you isolate those plays as the meat between the big thick-ass bread sandwiches on either side that say he doesn't do that very well, you might get fooled into thinking he's a better processor than he is. But if I'm right, then you're looking at deep ball, Terry's not open, Diami's not open, Jahan or whoever's running deep isn't open, and he might have the check down with Robinson or Eckler, but he's not throwing it. He's running it. And then he's getting creamed, and I know that he's taken some hits in the preseason, but it's going to be a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
When, if Jamal, I'm thinking of someone like a Jamal Adams type, hits his ass.
It's going to be it's a different world.
Are they facing the AFC North? That's all I want to know. Because if they're facing the AFC North, after any of those teams, it could be trouble. So I just look at it from that perspective. I think he's going to start strong. People are going to look. I just see Marcus Mariota all over again because it's like he had a slow processor. He's a straight line-ish runner. It's Robert Griffin was a little bit that way too, to an extent, mainly because it was a different system. I think he had a faster processor than I would describe, maybe than Marcus, but he played in a system that was wildly different than what you'd see in the NFL, and Kyle tried to cater towards that a little bit, but you look at that, he's a straight line-ish runner too. And he was,
100%.
So you could see early success, and then teams adjust. And I know people are looking at him as the sexy rookie pick. I think I would not be shocked at all when the dust settles that Bo Nix starts all 17 games, keeps his head on a swivel, and may not have sexy stats. And if you look at the average per game, Jaden Daniels is probably going to be much higher. But the number of games played, you'll probably come out better with Bo Nix, So
could be,
and slow growth from there. So, who's a player that you are sold on? Who's been buzzworthy?
Oh man, honestly, Ray Davis.
Yes,
he's impressed me. I think he, becomes number 2 in that offense before long, and I think we're going to start to see as the year goes on here, a little more even split with Cook. And I think the goal line work too, you want to take some off Josh Allen's plate. And James Cook isn't that guy, right? The one knock on James Cook is play strength, right? And I don't think that's ever going to be even what his brother was, who at his peak had really good play strength, right? Especially before the ACL. And I think for Ray Davis, you just see a solid number 2 back that's not going to make many mistakes. I think this could be one of the better tandems in the league too, and I think he's going to be a big part of that offense, especially as they move into the playoffs. Especially when you want to keep James Cook fresh and you want to keep him interchangeable. But for me, when I watched Ray Davis run, it's the same as it was in college, but he's better. The instincts were there, the contact balance and how he handled and negated contact was really, really good in the preseason so far. Which is the biggest, I would say, jump for running backs besides processing. It's how you negate contact when players are obviously bigger, faster, stronger, more physical as they were in college. And he's done a fantastic job of doing so. And I've been really impressed with him, and I think he's one of those guys that, if you're playing fantasy football, after the first few weeks, he's not going to be in your waiver wire anymore. So I think he's one of those guys that I would definitely look into adding if you're a listener and playing fantasy this year.
Yeah, he's one of those guys rounds 18 to 20. He's one of the,
100%
with kicker, defense, and Ray Davis. Basically,
kicker, defense, and Ray Davis.
In whatever order you feel best suits you. That's probably for me. It's been kicker, defense, Andre Yosivas, or Dylan Lobby sometimes. But Ray Davis certainly fits that if his ADP is not he drops to that range. I would definitely do that. I love that. I mean, he certainly is on my list. Besides Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, Lad McConkey, those are all guys that I'm sold on from their preseason buzz. I'm gonna say Michael Penix, and I think mainly because, and I've been quoting you pretty much all year about your thoughts on Kirk Cousins' foot and what we haven't seen yet, and what we're gonna have to see whether that works out. But what I did see was what we didn't see on, if that makes any sense, this past 100%. Weekend. They were like, you know what? We don't need to play Michael Penix this week. Let's find out who our third quarterback is. We're good. He can just he's good. We're good to go with him. So that tells us a number of things. And these are speculations, but they're plausible speculations. Penix has been lighting it up in camp. At moments, there's things he has to learn, but I think you're getting football people saying this guy's going to be a problem in the league. Last time I've heard somebody say this guy's going to be a problem was John Elway when he watched Patrick Mahomes in the final game of his rookie season destroy the Broncos at certain moments in that game. I don't think Penix is going to be that good, but I certainly think that he's going to have he fits the personnel in that passing game that desperately needs a guy who will trust throw these players open. So it's a great fit. And then on top of that, then you think we haven't seen really what Kurt can or can't do yet. So they're hedging because they don't want to be down to their third quarterback. When the season starts, they might need their draft pick.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think the one thing people think this is a Michael Penix deal, and you hit the nail on the head. This might be we're a little bit less bullish on Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
And his obviously at that age recovering from that significant of an injury. We even saw, if you look at Aaron Rodgers, look at some of the practice clips, he's still favoring that left leg.
Yeah.
There's still not 100% confidence. I think for Achilles injuries, in my experience, you get to that 18 to 24 month mark, and then some of that confidence comes back.
Yeah.
We're not even at 12 months.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the issue is, when you're playing a game at full speed, if physically you're not at 100% from a play speed perspective, especially with your dropbacks, and does that affect getting through your progressions? Does that affect your reads? Does it affect how you get the ball out? Does it affect how you compensate? And that's the thing is, Kirk Cousins might not be as well off as we might think. Could be, but I think you're absolutely right. They're hedging in a way because if Michael Penix goes down, so does the whole boat.
Yeah.
So it's it's going to be really. That's one of the big storylines for me to watch the whole year is, are they going to get to a point in the year, and let's say Kirk Cousins isn't doing what he normally does, where they're going to say, all right, Mike, it's your time. It's your turn.
And especially when everyone complained about, you could have gotten another defensive lineman. We really needed a pass rusher, or we needed another safety. And what did they do this past week? Matt Judon and Justin Simmons. So this team's ready to roll. I mean, Justin Simmons is the perfect aging safety to captain a defense, especially with Jesse Bates opposite him, the up-and-comer. And then you have Judon, who really is still in peak years, if you would say. He's got another year or two left at least.
Yeah.
So you could, this is a team that could all work if you just have a player who can help them win games, or not lose them for you. And I think, that's my guy. All right, so who's a player from, maybe we should monitor them afar longer term. They didn't necessarily emerge to get playing time, but you watch them, and for whatever reason you're like, he's on a team, he's not on a team, I don't care. I know this guy can play.
Ah, man. I'm not going to do my obligatory Javon Baker.
Okay.
I'm going to say Jalen McMillan.
All right.
Jalen McMillan's going to be one of those guys, I think, that in 3 to 5 years is maybe one of the better twos in the NFL. I think he's like a Darius Slayton plus type player, which is not a bad thing whatsoever.
No.
And I think he fits that offense to a T. I think he starts immediately in 3 receiver sets too. We're not talking about him, but I think he definitely starts alongside Godwin and Evans. And I think with Godwin bumping inside of the slot and obviously Evans taking one side of the field at X, you get Jalen McMillan moving around at Z, which is, in my opinion, his most natural position. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch that offense grow. If Baker Mayfield can obviously distribute the ball to all three of those guys, that'll be interesting. But I think in terms of a guy that can grow into a larger role down the line, and that's going to get some real game experience from day one, I think it's going to be Jalen McMillan.
I love it. That's great. I'm going to go 2 running backs, and neither of them are. One's a rookie, one is not.
Okay.
And I think one doesn't have a team, and that's Dylan Johnson. I've talked enough about him on
Love
this
it.
show.
Yep.
But after what he did this weekend, even though he got cut, it's like he got a showcase. He got a chance to showcase what he can do a little bit. I'll be shocked if there isn't a team that adds him at some point,
Sure.
and he works his way onto a roster. I mean, I think he's kind of like this iteration of Spencer Ware. And,
Okay.
and Spencer
I love
Ware,
that.
stuck behind Marshawn Lynch. They brought Robert Turbin in ahead of him. Then he ended up having a DUI offense, wound up getting cut, wound up in the Giants for a cup of coffee, and then worked his way up from the practice squad of the Chiefs and into a position that if he didn't get hurt, he probably would have split time with Kareem Hunt for longer than just part of a season.
For sure.
So there's that. I like the kid's game, and I think that Cleveland or Detroit could use a back like that. Even though I know Sion Vaki is someone that people are very interested in, and I understand the rationale why. But I think that Dylan Johnson could fit in either one of those systems and do well. Or if the Saints just get tired of Kendre Miller, because obviously their coach called him out for not being able to stay healthy, which, however you take that, it sounds like practically they may be having at the end of their rope with him. And if they want an upgrade from Jordan Mims, who's an interesting player out of Fresno State, give him a little competition. Either that guy could do it. The other one is Christopher Brooks. I just he got a little concussion. He got a concussion in that game. But just watching what he can do, he's like an elephant with a bunch of road runners, and it's and they're dressing, and he's like trying to disguise himself in a road runner outfit, and
that's hilarious,
and it doesn't work. But it's like, put him on a team that wants an elephant, and he's gonna be the best elephant that you can get.
Absolutely, and there's definitely teams that are gonna need the elephant if theirs goes down, right? I mean,
Baltimore,
Baltimore, Detroit. If Montgomery goes down, like that's a role in those two offenses. I think like that's much needed.
Yeah. Pittsburgh.
I like that. Yeah, Pittsburgh. If Najee goes down, because we already have we already have an injury in that backfield. So but yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, and Cordero Patterson, you need to get him if you want to just ride high for a week or two. My stab at a player is get Cordero.
That's hilarious.
Get Cordero for a couple of weeks. You might win a couple of games while you're trying to find out how to get a better running back. And because I'll pull him out of the bottle, he could probably give you 25 to 40 carries in the first 2 weeks if they needed to give him that many. And then when Warren's back, they'll put him back out to special teams.
It's funny because I think over the past 5 years, he's been the most delightfully frustrating running back to own. When he transitioned to running back, I remember I was obviously a Bears fan, watched a lot of Bears football with Matt Nagy, and it was Dave Montgomery's rookie year.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how frustrating it was watching Matt Nagy sub Cordell Patterson out of the 84 out of the field on 3rd and 1.
Yeah.
Oh my! It was in like clockwork. But I mean, that's who he is.
Yeah.
Right? Offensive coordinators absolutely love Cordell Patterson.
Yeah.
For good reason. But I think he's definitely going to be one of those guys that's going to have a couple boom weeks every year.
It's amazing to me. You forget, someone who scouted him as a receiver, it just, when somebody finally mentioned or just reminded on TV, this is a 230, 235 pound running back. And then you start watching him and you watched what he does in Atlanta and you're just like, wow. Just wow. I love what I see with what he does. But okay, so how about a player from the college circuit right now that you've enjoyed watching this summer? Who's someone that's come to mind? You've sent me some clips. I know.
That's a good question. He's on that same team actually, and that's Cam Ward.
Oh.
Now Miami Hurricanes quarterback. I think Miami might win the ACC. I think they have a really good roster, and Xavier Restrepo. They have George. They have Damian Martinez, who's a really good back in this upcoming class as well. They're pretty deep. I think watching this quarterback class, and obviously preliminarily we haven't had 2024 film from these guys just yet, but I think Cam Ward, in my opinion, is better than Shedeur Sanders. He's better than Carson Beck.
There you go.
I really like what he does. I think he can throw to all three levels, throws with anticipation, touch, the layer of the ball, really good instincts in the pocket of when to bail. I just think he's one of those guys, too, like we're kind of underselling. Like last year with Michael Penix, right? Michael Penix has never been a first-round pick, but most people didn't really have him that high. And I think this year it's Cam Ward. I just really like what he does. And on that same team, and we talked about a little bit earlier, freshman running back Jordan Lyle he goes to Miami. Went to St. Thomas Aquinas, really big school, right? They win their class of Florida basically every year. But he's one of those prospects in the next 3 years that has a chance to be a late first, early second rounder if everything pans out. Just has a lightning in a bottle type skill set. And, for me, is probably some people listening as well. You play Devy. The one thing you do is you watch some tape of these dudes in high school.
Yeah. And
I'll tell you what, you get two types of tape sometimes. You get the guys who play, against the Mary Sisters of the poor of the world, and you're big, they're 6 feet, 220, and everybody else is,
yeah,
100%. You're playing these poor dudes who are like 5'8", 145, and they're just waiting to get home so mom cooks some dinner, right? But you get those guys, but then you get the kids that play against others like them, and they still look otherworldly sometimes. And for me, that was Jahmyr Gibbs a few years back when he was coming out, and just looked like he was, different than everybody on the field, right? And then Jordan Lyle in this class is that for me. And just watching his tape, just the movement skill, the abruptness, just the ability to stay on his feet when he gets hit pretty hard. Not a big frame. I think he's only 180, 185 pounds right now. But that was impressive to me. But my biggest one is definitely Cam Ward. I mean, he's been the most, I would say my favorite watch of the summer was just kind of looking at how good he was compared to what I thought he was coming in. He was at Incarnate Word and Washington State, and now he's at Miami. I think he's one of those guys, too. It might be a dark horse for the Heisman.
Nice. I'll give you two. There's the running back from Rutgers, Kyle Monangai. I think that's he doesn't strike me as extremely explosive, but he has some good. I think he has a decent enough initial burst, good contact balance, powerful back, pretty good blocker. I think that there's potential there for him to develop along those lines. I enjoyed watching him, kind of a high effort player. And then a guy who reminds me a little bit in style of play and quickness of Aaron Jones. And that's Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who was from New Mexico, and before that he was at Alabama State. And then he had like a huge season at New Mexico and broke records at New Mexico State. I think that's where he was at. And then he transferred to Ole Miss and then decided, no thanks, and went to Arizona. And so now he's going to be at Arizona. But he's like 205, 210, somewhere around that range. Excellent lateral movement, explosive in the short range of the field. Someone who can flip his hips and set up blocks reasonably well. Creativity. He has that ability to not just do things in a structured sort of way, but also alter his body in ways that don't seem all that efficient. But he finds his way to get skinny and slide away and make do with what's available to him. So, there's other backs who I think run the lemonade stand a little bit better maybe than he does. They take the bad and turn it into good. But his isn't bad, So he's someone that has definitely intrigued me, and I enjoyed watching him.
Love that.
So, who's the first rookie that makes the biggest splash this year?
Oh, man. I think it's got to be Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
Just because I think he's going to be, he might be that whole offense. If you look at that Giants offensive roster, you have literally nobody that's a big play threat, that is a number 1, number 2, or number 3 option in the NFL, in my opinion. I mean, I think he's going to be a guy that gets all the volume, and I think he has all the talent in the world. You could, for me on film, he was my wide receiver 1 on film.
Yep.
Right. I think that it's an interchangeable between the top 3 guys. I think all 3 of these guys, Harrison Jr., Dunze, and Neighbors, are all incredibly talented kids. But for me, Neighbors is going to be the one that's going to absolutely carry just a horrendous offense.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to have really, really big weeks. I think, someone too that might be a little bit surprising is Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
I think how they're going to utilize him is going to be, how Getsy's going to utilize him is going to be very different. And look at Cole Kmet, what he did last year, right? He had a really, really good season. Brock Bowers is a lot more than Cole Kmet. A lot.
He's Vernon Davis and Aaron Hernandez's Frankenstein.
Yeah. And so I think they're going to find ways to get him the ball and be creative with him as a ball carrier. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to command a lot of manufactured touches or utilize him downfield, because this is going to be an offense that's also not very good. You have Gardner Minshew or AOC at the helm, so it's like one of those, it's not going to be a very efficient offense, but I think Brock Bowers is going to play a bigger role than people think.
I like that call, and I was going to mention him as well, because at least while Gardner is the starter, and I think Gardner is the starter for the first half of the year, because I think what they realized is politically Antonio Pierce needed to say, we're not going to bench guys who we had as starters last year at some point, and he's a young player, so I don't want to lose the morale of the team, but we're going to make him earn it, and we're going to give it to Gardner right now, even if Gardner didn't blow everybody away and win the competition outright. But they paid him, and on top of that, too, they know what he is, and they can give Aiden O'Connell more time, because in today's NFL, the idiocracy that it can be with quarterback development is, oh, well, if we start him and then we have to bench him, then we have to save face and say he's done. We can't just keep bringing him back in, because we're going to feel humiliated as an ownership, when my buddies tell me how bad my quarterback is, rather than me actually, rather than letting them start, benching them when the need be, bringing them back in. We don't have patience for that too often anymore. So why not wait a little longer to let O'Connell watch and learn? That's the best case scenario. But with Minshew, when he was with old Dallas Goedert, he averaged, together, Goddard averaged about 5 receptions, 5 targets, 4 receptions, and 62.5 yards per game during those 6 starts. So if he can do that, we're talking about 1,000-yard season, 68 catches, and 5 touchdowns. And really, when you look at what Minshew does well, it's thrown in the middle of the field.
Yep.
It's side boundary throws where you give a chance for the receiver to win it, but you're not trying to make him outrun everybody, because he doesn't have that kind of drive the ball arm. And who's going to be in the middle of the field more often? Who's the one that's going to suffer a little bit more? Probably Devontae Adams is going to suffer a little bit more at the expense of Bowers. And sorry, Jacoby Myers is a nice story, but he's about to get leapfrogged in the pecking order, if you ask me.
I 100% agree, because this is an offense that's going to need some juice too.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, I also like Trey Tucker.
Yeah.
He's been fun to watch.
Yes.
I think when you watch him too as a Horned Frog, you're like, oh my God, this kid's electric. But I think when we're talking about guys who are on the field for 90+% of the snaps, it's going to be Bowers. And I think he's going to be, kind of that juice in the arm type player for that offense, because they're going to need it. They don't have much. And this is very much an offense that's going to be, 12 personnel, 13, run the ball. But it's not going to work when you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs every time. It worked once last year. But I think, when you're trying to keep up with the Joneses and keep up with teams that score 30 points a game, you're going to need that shot in the arm player, and I think that's Brock Bowers for that offense for sure.
Well, you mentioned the Chiefs, so I'm going to give mine and say, I'm with you on Neighbors, Odunze. I think those two guys easily could make the splash first, especially if they start making a point to target Odunze. I'd like to say just Caleb Williams easily but I think that's kind of a given that he's going to have some big splash moments. So I'm going to go on. It probably doesn't sound like I'm going out on a limb, but I'll explain why. Xavier Worthy, because I don't think he's as far away from the big three as people realize. I also think that there's two ways to look at this. One is that he is definitely going to stretch defenses to open up underneath routes for the Chiefs. And I think that that's where his biggest impact may lie. If we're going to look at it conventionally and say, look, cover two is cover two, and you could be Randy Moss, unless you're Randy Moss, you're probably not beating two defenders double covering you down the field on a deep route. It's probably not happening. But if there's someone who can outrun a defense in this league, it's him and Tyreek Hill. And if there's someone who has the arm to be able to get it there to him, it is Mahomes. And if there is a coach who may have found some wrinkles and figured out some ways, now all we needed was that fast guy who can catch and run some routes, it would be Andy Reid. So I'm not completely eliminating that, it's cover two and they're not going to beat cover two, because if they could have, they would have done it with Tyreek Hill a few years ago when they put the cover two clamps down on him. But I'm not going to rule that out just yet. But what I will say is that Xavier Worthy is more than just a deep threat beater.
100%.
And they're going to use him enough, especially with Rashee Rice and some of the legal stuff we don't know about, whether it's been buried or whether it's gonna rear its ugly head this year at some point. And then you look at the rest of the depth chart. They need a number two receiver. And I think, Rashee Rice was a nice schemed open option once they went through everybody else and it didn't work. And Rice kind of stepped up to the plate. But Worthy's a complete player. And I think we're going to see that early on. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that makes the biggest splash.
Yep, love that.
So who's the first sleeper to hit then?
Ooh, how deep are we going?
As deep as you want to go, man.
Ooh. First sleeper to hit. I don't know if he's a sleeper, not that deep, but I think Khalil Shakir is going to have a massive year.
Yeah.
I think he's one for me. He's gonna have a massive year, but also too, this is a guy that we talk about a ton. Dylan Lowby is gonna be really good.
Yeah,
I think he's gonna be really good for this offense. He's already their starting third down back, right? He's already getting those reps, and there's a team that might be playing from behind a bit, right? If Gardner stagnates in the first half, you might be looking at some scores like 17-3 or 20-3 in the first half, especially when you're playing teams like the Chiefs. That's going to give opportunity to Lowby. And I think for the future, too, they want to see they probably want to see what they have in Lowby as more of just a third down guy. But I'd say Shakir and Lowby are definitely my two. Shakir, I think, might have 1,000+ yard year. I think him and Kincaid are going to really be the motors of that offense.
I'm with you.
I don't think Coleman's there yet.
No.
I just think as just a pure, as a separator at the early stages in routes, I think he still has a lot to learn, a lot of room to grow. Obviously, he's a good player. I think above the rim is where he thrives. But again, I think this is going to be an offense that flows through Kincaid and the rest of that crew. But I think Shakir is one of those guys that's I'm trying to leave every draft with him for sure.
Yeah, I've been on that train for a couple years, and I love hearing it. I'm haven't left it. I will add a couple of guys. All right, so these are guys that just are drafted late, probably for good reason, and they've either been written off or just overlooked for whatever reason as of late. And J.K. Dobbins, I want to believe.
Oh yeah,
I want to believe, and I'm picking him in every draft because it just he's said, I know in the past when he got hurt, he tried to go. He played the whole game of like, I'm ready, and then he clearly wasn't. And then he got frustrated with people because they were poking holes from what they saw, and then he got he looked halfway decent, got hurt, and then he told the media the truth. Like, you heard him say, he goes, I wasn't fully there. I didn't realize until I started playing, and then really what was going on. And I'm, and kind of like, it's kind of that person who was confronted and had a little bit of a, like people just kind of confronted him and saying, okay, look, we're gonna bring you to Jesus, have a type of moment with him. And then he got hurt again, and he came back and he looked really good, and then had this latest injury. But to hear him talk, he's like, I haven't felt this good since I was at Ohio State, and he didn't get hurt at Ohio State. So I want to believe that he's there, and the fact that Kamani Vidal is, kind of just waiting there in the wings, but not much has been talked about because he's not getting a lot of reps, and him and Gus Edwards, both Dobbins and Gus Edwards could do that show for Greg Roman one more time. At that late of a pick, I've got to give it a shot.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's that. The other guy who I had in mind, and because I spent so much time talking about Dobbins, I probably forgot who it was already. But too bad. Like, who was the guy who would be the first sleeper to hit? Oh, no, Taysom Hill. Hill.
That's really. I mean, if you need a tight end, you could do way worse.
Because here's the thing. I recommend to people this year, it's like, look, if you want to know the safest tight ends are, look to offenses that have a lot of condensed looks where you've bunched your receivers tight to the formation. You're playing 2 and 3 tight ends. You got a fullback in there. You're looking at Shanahan's offense, McVay's offense, the Detroit Lions offense with Ben Johnson. Now with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox with Joe Brady's offense. You're likely going to get all these types of looks where you get tight ends matched up with defensive ends and linebackers and safeties, and it's going to drive a lot of value, and everything looks the same, and the play action game and all these little options in the middle of the field that help the tight end game in an immense way. So the guys who are generally do that are Kittle, Laporta, Kelsey, Andrews. Certainly those are guys that we know for sure. Then you can look at Pitts. He's going to be in a McVay-like system, and maybe he's a little more risky because he hasn't had a quarterback. But as I've joked, I joke in an article you'll see tomorrow, if Desmond Ridder if there was a game, throwing into reading coverage was like a game for Squid Game. Desmond Ridder, and it was like in place of red light, green light, Desmond Ridder would be the first one gone. So I think they finally found a quarterback or two, and I think that one way or the other, we're going to see Kyle Pitts return to what we saw with Matt Ryan as a rookie, with him as a rookie with Matt Ryan. And then the guy who's like, to me, like the signal that you say, all right, we're running low on these tight ends, and he's not really one of them, but he's good enough, and that's Evan Ingram. Once you get to Evan Ingram as your 6th or 7th tight end on the board, everyone else starts to become a big question mark due to system,
Right.
or ability. Like Njoku, a huge percentage came with Flacco, not with the guy who's hiding out in the woods in his house because he probably doesn't want to play football anymore. But he's tied to a huge contract. He just wishes he could probably disappear, and a lot of people probably wish that for him. And then you have a guy like Dallas Goedert, who maybe the system, he's talented. Is the system going to be better for him to have a career year, or is it that he's number 3 in the pecking order no matter what? So how good as that can be. But then you start going further down, and when you get past round 12, and there's Taysom Hill. And you're looking at the system, the Kubiak system, where they liked using Owen Daniels way back in the day.
Oh, man.
Owen Daniels and Casey and
the Matt Schaub.
Matt Schaub, yeah, exactly. And and if there's a Matt Schaub-like quarterback in this league right now, it's Derek Carr. Okay,
Yeah, no
just
kidding.
with a bigger arm. Okay, and lots of rollouts, run game with 6 gaps, that with that extra gap or two with multiple tight ends. And now everyone knows that Taysom Hill is a red zone monster. Everyone knows what he was able to do in Pete Carmichael's offense. But now they've got to contend with the fact that this offense is completely different now. And now they've got to rescout and figure out how they're going to disguise Taysom Hill in certain looks. And when's he going to be targeted? When's he not? That might take 6 to 8 weeks to happen. By then, we're going to see him score in predictable ways and score in unpredictable ways. And I'm thinking if you're looking for a bargain, that's the bargain right there. This guy could be like tight end 2, or tight end 3
100%
after
right.
like 6 to 8 weeks, because he's fullback catching passes, he's the quarterback catching passes, he's the fullback playing quarterback, he's the he's the tight end, the H-back, he's all split out as a wide receiver. I mean, there's so many things they do with this dude, and now it's a whole different configuration.
Right, and look at the running backs behind Kamara too.
Yeah,
Kendrick Miller, he's not in the good graces right now. Jamal Williams at this stage in his career isn't really much to write home about. I mean, if you told me that second on the team in touchdowns is Taysom Hill, heck, he might even lead the team in touchdowns.
Yep.
I think over the past 3 years, I read a stat, or 4 years, he and Kamara have the same amount of red zone touches. 30. Both have 30 as the last couple of years, or whatever. Yeah. 3 years maybe. And I think we're going to see a lot of that usage stick, but also get an uptick in the usage as a receiver for Taysom Hill too. So yeah, I love that one. I think he could be a league-winning type tight end, 100%.
Yeah, because the red zone stuff gets him into the top. He's been number 9 and 12 the past 2 years, just based on the red zone work that he gets. Right. Now, if you throw in 35, 45 catches, if he's used to that extent.
Yeah.
Now you're like, oh, wow. Okay, now we're talking about another 250 to 400 yards added on top of that, and maybe a touchdown or two from a distance. And now, he could be an 8 to 10 touchdown guy. That's nutso. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, look, we love having you guys listening. You can certainly find, Brandon Angelo's work on Twitter. You can check out his site and check out all the great work that he does with the newsletters that you should be subscribing to, and the package that he has to offer in terms of the ways that he looks and breaks down the game and breaks down the prospects. Well worth getting. I highly suggest you head out there and give folks the site address and the details of where you want them to go specifically.
I appreciate it, man. It's angeloanalysis.com. This time of year is a lot of fun. Got the newsletters going out weekly, looking at different segments of trading for players, trading away players, do a weekly Q&A with people who send me questions, but also going to look a little bit more in the Devy aspect of it. Now we got college football rolling around. What should we be expecting next year from this quarterback class, right? I mentioned guys like Cam Ward. But what are some of these guys' ceilings? What should we be looking at in our rookie drafts next year? But it's a fun time of year. We got everything rolling around the corner. But yeah, man, I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, you can find me at mattwaldman.com. You can get the RSP or the RSP Dynasty rankings and projections. I'll probably have another update sometime in the next 5 to 7 days. For the second update in August, I have the Fantasy List of Lists draft plan article at Football Guys version 2.0. I wrote it this afternoon, finished it this afternoon. It'll be out tomorrow as usual for the gut check. And just watching a lot of running backs right now. I think I'm through about 30 running backs for the 2025 NFL draft. And I'm probably going to watch another 20 more before I move on to wide receivers. I'll probably start wide receivers in September and make my way through that. So, it's always a blast to be able to get to do this with Brandon. And, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. And, appreciate you tuning in. If you have questions or requests, you can certainly, email me at mattwaldman, rsp@gmail.com. Thanks again, folks, and good night.